Hello, this is Smzaeo, and I've been a gamer for 25 years. As everyone knows, the current generation of video games are ending with the Nintendo Wii, Xbox 360, and PlayStation 3. And the next generation has already begun, and with the Nintendo Wii U and the upcoming releases of the Xbox One and PlayStation 4. Now, I'd like to show you the history of the games I've played, what I liked about games and what I disliked, and relate it to the current big talks that happened at E3 and afterwards. So here we go. This was my first game that I ever played, Super Mario Bros. 3, when I was just 3 years old. Now, I can't remember a lot about my childhood, but what I can remember is the games I played, and the fact that I had friends that I'd visit, or that they would visit, and they would borrow games and play them. And many were introduced throughout my time as a childhood, including Sonic. As a kid, I was completely obsessed with gorillas, and I read a book by Jane Goodall about gorillas, and I heard about a game called Donkey Kong Country coming out, and man, I tell you, I was obsessed. Well, I got the game for Christmas, and my dad happened to come into the room that morning and see me on the stage, and he said, "Well, I guess you got coal for Christmas." Now, while I mentioned that Super Mario Bros. Was my first official game, I distinctly remember the original Metroid game for the NES being the first, actually. Although I never beat the game, my dad eventually bought me Super Metroid for the SNES, a game that we played a lot. Hatching secret after secret, looking for missiles and super missiles, exploring the underwater world, and it was just, the size and scope of the game was absolutely astounding. The graphics of the time were absolutely beautiful, and the game just struck people as an epic adventure. Star Fox 64 for the N64 was an absolutely amazing game, and was one of the few N64 that I got to enjoy previously before GoldenEye, The Legend of Zelda, and some of the other bigger hits. This is one of the few games where I had my best friend, my sister's best friend, and all of us just took the turns handing the controller to each other, playing this absolutely wonderful game. Now, this was before I became a big JRPG player, and as you can see, this is the kind of era of the games, you know, that me and my friend used to play together amongst some of the older ones. The other game we played that day, although I wasn't very good at it, was Pokemon Snap. We all started at the beginning, and we eventually worked our way to taking a picture of Mew. Now I can't even take a picture of Bulbasaur. Anyways, gaming back then, and what gaming still means to me, is not only just playing by yourself, but it's also playing with other people and being able to trade your own game. Now, Microsoft wants to use DRM and prevent people from buying or selling their games, or at the very least making a lot of coin. Could you just imagine back in those games wanting to play Pokemon Snap and either have to buying it yourself or paying a lot of money to play it at a friend's, or have a friend play a version of the game? It's kind of ridiculous sounding, isn't it? That's kind of the idea of what Microsoft wants. Now, surprisingly, unlike a lot of other players, I never played a Zelda game until the Ocarina of Time, which actually came out of Super Smash Bros. Melee for the Gamecube. Now, me and my brother, we played Link and Ganondorf in Melee, and I was intrigued by the characters, so I asked my best friend if I could borrow a Zelda game from him, and he introduced me to The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time.
considered by many to be the greatest Zelda game of our time. And when I was first playing, he was just astounded how bad I was playing. But he lent me the game anyways, and within a week I beat Ganondorf and became a Zelda fan, and eventually got a hold of Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, and the most recent one, Skyward Sword. This is ActRaiser, a game that I didn't play until many, many years after, but it's amazing how well it resembles, or actually Dark Cloud and Dark Cloud 2 resemble many of the ideas that was released in this game. And anyways, I was introduced to this game by my best friend, and we ended up playing and beating it all in the same night. And it was really just an adventure you really can't forget about, containing all of the classics of the older games and some revolutionary new ideas in it, including building up a town and fighting bosses and just having great, wonderful action-adventure fun. Now, while this wasn't the first role-playing game that I ever played, it was by Kingdom Hearts that led me to this game. Now, you're wondering how I was led to Final Fantasy through Kingdom Hearts. Well, like the previous game that I mentioned with the trading, a friend lent me Kingdom Hearts and I played it, which would eventually lead me to buying my own PlayStation, and then which led me to buying Final Fantasy, Tales, and a mess of other Japanese role-playing games. So you can see by an unrestricted market to buying and selling games adds to more buying and selling games for the companies, because more players are introduced to the games without insane amount of prices being placed onto them. For me, video games have always been about the story, the contents inside. I don't want to have to plug my system into the internet or have a camera watch me while I'm just trying to sit back and enjoy an epic story like Xenosaga. Going through the hoops like that just takes away the fun that games like these for me could do, or for anyone who wants to play an FPS, for example, or any other type of game. I'd rather sit back and enjoy the game than being forced to go through some hoops. That is what I'm not looking forward to in this next generation. For me, a video game is getting the most out of it and having fun. With a ton of restrictions or making you go through hoops, the fun begins to disappear and you begin to have less of it. And that may overall, in a long-term and short-term run, make the fans of video games not as interested and unwilling to spend more money into playing. Over the generations, we've had multiple systems, and for many games, it was just a matter of putting the game into the cartridge or the disc into the system, and the game would play. No big deal. This current generation, we've now turned it into a menu. Access to friends, the internet, going to buying games or add-on content, the actual games itself, Netflix, video editor, music, photo gallery, the settings, and then finally the options. It can quickly get confusing, and in my opinion, when I first got these newer generation systems, was just getting through the systems to even play the game. So the fact that we're already moving away from just putting the game in and playing, we're already moving into a menu system. And it's just making it less fun. For example, for me and a lot of other players, it should just be a simple matter of sticking your game in and playing. Having to be able to connect to the internet once a day to be able to play your system, or having a camera watching you, it just begins to take away what video game systems are meant for. It's just supposed to play a game. You should just pick your game, for example, and play. But above all, what a game should have is teamwork, or just playing by yourself, or just overall fun. And many Tales games and many other games have that. Just a game that lets you have fun without 1,000 restrictions or so, just covering it. And that's what's important to me as a video game. I'm honestly very nervous about the next generation of video games. You know, sure, they're going to look graphically really epic, but with all the enhancements and stuff they've added onto them, is it going to become a system that we would rather not play? And are we going to think of the older games, or what?
Well, I showed you a lot of different games and what gaming means to me. And while a lot of the ideas that I talked about are the opinions of this own player, one of the things that has me concerned is that I grew up in the idea that gaming was just the idea of turning a system on, playing the game and playing with friends, or playing by yourself, or playing with other people, and it was just the idea to have a good time. Now video games have turned into where you could watch a movie or go onto the internet, and they're just becoming more complex, and it should just be about gaming and having a good time video gaming. Now each player can have their own idea and what it means, and if you want to buy an Xbox One, that's up to you. But just all the ideas that Microsoft is setting with it has me very nervous. Does that mean that I won't buy one in the future? I probably will, but only if they have a really rare game that I like and that I want to play. But then it's very likely that the system will just end up sitting in a box only to be used during very rare circumstances. And so I'm hoping that Microsoft will pay attention to what people are saying and seriously consider that some of their decisions are certainly stepping on their consumers, and maybe hopefully make it a little more consumer friendly. Well, I hope you all enjoyed the video. This has been Smzaeo. Later.